2013, the year where the iPhone 5S, Note 3, and LG G2 had just come out. Snapdragon 800 was the highest end processor back then, but nowadays, what is that? Huh? Like 3 or 4 years old? I don't know. But let's take a look now and see how the Nexus 5 holds up in this day and age. We have one with the custom ROM, and we're running a little bit of different things, so let's take a look and I'll tell you all about it. There are tons of used phones you can get right now at a very good price. Some of them are better, some of them are a bit worse. But let's see what you can do with $250 in this day and age. Is it better to buy a new phone or maybe a slightly used phone with better specs? So we have at the time you can get a Nexus 5 as well as an LG G2, iPhone 5S, and Note 3. Now keep in mind these are all around roughly $250, and I'm just going to go with whatever I think would be a more cheap oriented / value oriented deal. The Nexus 5 is something that I thought was the best because it was supported by Google for so long. It was also made by LG. The iPhone 5S is also pretty good if you like to be a pleb. Just kidding. So the Note 3 is also a really good choice, but I stuck with the Nexus 5 in the end. Some of the specs here you got is a Snapdragon 800, 16 gigs of RAM, 2 gigs, 2 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs of storage, and 5-inch 1080p screen. I've been using the phone for about a week now, and I went through a couple things. We're going to take a look at the 5 things that make a great smartphone. So we have screen, build, software, performance, and camera. Let's take a look and see how it holds up now in 2018. So I installed a custom ROM called Resurrection Remix to have Android 8.1 beta installed on my phone. So far, it's actually pretty smooth. It has an AOSP ROM, which means it's basically stock. There's not really any bloatware. It's a clean version of Android, but the downside of that is that you don't have an optimized camera. It just uses the built-in, Google camera, so quality is quite lacking. I will get into that a little bit more. I haven't had any performance issues or crashes with apps so far, which is good, but this highly affects the mileage of the battery depending on using stock or using your own custom ROM. Apps ran great. I was able to check my email, Snapchat, watch some YouTube videos on the side, and actually pay for food via tap. I was actually surprised with this because it's in a custom ROM, but it still works surprisingly, so that's pretty awesome. Multitasking wasn't the greatest with only 2 gigs of RAM. However, it did do really well since you can only play one game at a time and you can't really watch a YouTube video and play a game at the same time anyways. So it held up pretty well for what it was. The custom ROM did not actually have a multi-function screen thing, so that's unfortunate, but if you do, you could try find a ROM that does have that feature. Otherwise, it didn't really bother me that I was missing out. I didn't really need it at any time, so it seemed to be okay with me. Jumping into call quality for a bit, the phone did hold up pretty well. It didn't do as great on something like a train or a bus, where it's a little loud with the road noise and everything, but overall it still did okay. I think it's something to do with the software or maybe the microphone noise isolation or something. It wasn't working very well in that part, but that was the only issue. I guess it was just old or something's up with it. That might be something that comes along when you get an older phone, especially if you install software that isn't intended to be on it. I'm guessing if you use the stock Android, the one that was released by Google and meant for this phone, it would not happen. But with my test case, I guess it did. So again, your mileage may vary on that part. Alright, so onto the battery. 2300 milliamp hours, not the greatest, not the biggest, but it does do its job. It can do pretty well. If you do just something simple like email, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, things like that, it's not too bad in that kind of sense. If you play games, it's gonna die so fast. So you need to get a battery bank or maybe bring a charger with you in that sense. I would actually recommend you get a quick charge 1.0 charger because it actually supports it. It's a little old, but it supports it, and it's 50% in 30 minutes. Not too bad compared to some newer phones. It's still about that time. It's not the greatest and newest standard, but I'm sure it will handle most test cases. If you really need that charge last minute, throw it onto the charger, give you that top up in battery, and you're good to go out of here. So the Nexus 5 actually supports Qi wireless charging. It's a crazy thing because it's a super old phone, but it does support it. So that is really cool to see. And if you have one lying around, you can just use it right away. Nothing needed, which is really sweet actually. So the camera on this phone sucks. It's a freaking potato. And if you want anything more than just a selfie or anything like a shared picture on Instagram, you might as well go somewhere else. This thing sucks, and you won't be able to find anything on this phone other than the Google stock camera. The sharpness is completely gone and noise is all over the place. It's good enough for Snapchat or something with like a fun little thing, but other than that, if you're gonna do it as a more professional Instagram post, I would go somewhere else. And the camera is just used for most basic photography use. It can take video, it can take photos, but that's it. Nothing really more than that. Alright, 1080p screen. Is it good enough in 2018? Well, I would actually argue it is, and it's good enough for most people in fact. If you're not doing anything intense or like watching 4K video or something, then 1080p is actually good enough for most people. It does have a decent LCD with it, but it's a little flat, not as good as the S8 obviously with the OLED panels, but it's still a sweet spot as I don't really notice a difference when it comes to anything higher than it. Side by side with the S8, both phones have almost the same image, but the Nexus 5 costs $600 less. That's a lot of stuff you can get with $600. That's a lot of stuff. You can get like a lot of donuts, or yeah. Alright, the build quality of the phone isn't the greatest. It's all plastic glass kind of build. If you want something a little bit nicer like the HTC M7 or M8, which go for about $150 still, it's not a bad choice over this one, but you know, OG Google, Nexus, that's what I'm getting. Stop it. This guy needs to stop. Alright, overall though, this phone is still pretty good and usable in 2018. There's not too much stuttering, battery life is pretty decent. The only thing is the camera. If you really care about camera, you should go for something like a Note 3 or maybe even an iPhone 5S. But yeah, I would recommend it if you are on a really tight budget and can't really afford one of the newer phones. You can put down the extra money on like a wireless charger or a battery pack. I'll leave a link to the ones I use down below if you want to. I also say that I don't recommend really buying China phone unless you know what you're doing. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching my video. It's been a great time. I have $200 to spend. I bought this phone. What would you buy with $200? Would you buy a Nexus 5? Would you go for a China phone? iPhone 5S? Leave a comment down below. I'm really interested in seeing what you guys think of getting, because I get stuck with this problem all the time. People ask me this question all the time and I don't really know what to say either. So let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video.